Hello, Rick. Hello, John and Audrey. Very good, thank you. Hello, Louisa. Welcome. We'll get started in a few minutes. Hello, Karuna. Welcome. SN 2115. Sure. Let's see how short that is. Because we technically still need to read Majjhima Nikaya number 1. I forgot who asked for it. It's probably like a month ago. Although it's quite a big sutta. But hello, Philip. Welcome. Oh, it's the Nidana Samyutta. So you want to go over dependent origination, huh? Oh, interesting. You know, I gave a talk yesterday at Insight Meditation Community of Colorado in Denver, and I had to introduce the Noble Eightfold Path and then talk about right view. So that was pretty much what I talked about yesterday, right view. All right. I think we can get started. Hello, Visaka. Welcome. Share screen. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Uttahatta nisiddhatta ko atto supatenavo atorannanika nidda sallaviddana rupatang. Uttathata nisiddhatta dalhang sikkhata santiya mavo pamatte vinyane machuraja amohayata vasanuge. Yaya deva manusa cha sitta titantyatika tara tetang visittikang kanovo ma upajjaga kanatita hi sochanta niriyami samapita pamodo arajo pamodo pamadanupatito rajo Upamadena Vijaya Abhabbe Salamattanoti. All right, English. Wake up, make an effort. Get up and sit. What need of sleep? For the sick, what rest is there, pierced by the arrow of pain? Get up and sit. Train hard for peace. Let not Mara know that you are negligent, deluded, and under his control. Cross beyond this craving, tied to desiring which gods and men remain. Don't let this chance pass by. Those who do so grieve, sending themselves to hell. From dust arises negligence, from negligence to more. By diligence and knowledge, pluck out the arrow oneself. All right, friends, it is Monday night. It's 7 o'clock for people on the East Coast, 5 o'clock here in Colorado, and whatever o'clock it is from wherever you are. And that means it's time for another Monday night Dhammapalooza, the festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community, where we do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities. We did some chanting, maybe we'll do some meditation later. In between, who knows? We could have question and answer. We could have reading suttas. We could have Dhamma talk. It's all up to the community because this is a community guided event. That means that in the next couple of minutes, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, if you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, Karuna has already given us a sutta to discuss. That's one thing that we can do. And then we can move on from there. So we'll see what comes up in the chat. See, I've said hello to everybody already. All right, well, why don't we bring up the sutta that Karuna has asked to discuss. Kaccanagotta Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya number 1215. At Savatthi, then Venerable Kaccanagotta went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, they speak of this thing called right view. How is right view defined?" Kaccana, this world mostly relies on dual notions of existence and not existence. But when you truly see the origin of the world with right understanding, you won't have the notion of non-existence regarding the world. When you truly see the cessation of the world with right understanding, you won't have the notion of the existence regarding the world. So this is a this is a kind of middle path moment. Right? The Buddha is saying that essentially both extremes don't really cover the full the totality of what it is. Right? If you go to one extreme, you're missing out on one thing. If you go to the other extreme, you're missing on another. Now, I believe Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as duality. Yep. This world, Kaccana, for the most part, depends on a duality upon the notion of existence and the notion of non-existence. So there is like two states. Things exist or they don't exist. We already know that doesn't quite work with arahants, with awakened ones. Because people ask the Buddha, do they exist, do they not exist, etc., etc., etc. He doesn't answer. Because there's no way to answer. It would either be confusing or it's talking about something outside the conventional world that can't really be explained with conventional words. So we have this duality. So when you truly see the cessation of the world, then you're seeing the cessation of the world. Now, here the world could be talking about this mind and body. Always remember that. You most of the time, when the Buddha says the world, he's not talking about the earth. And he's talking about this mind and body. This world is for the most part shackled by attraction, grasping, and insisting. We'll see Bhikkhu Bodhi's. This world, Kaccana, is for the most part shackled by engagement, clinging, and adherence. But if, when it comes to this attraction, grasping, and mental fixation, insistence, and underlying tendency, you don't get attracted, grasp, and commit to the notion myself. You'll have no doubt or uncertainty that what arises is just suffering arising, and what ceases is just suffering ceasing. This is something you see in many places in the suttas. Even probably one of the more famous places, Bhikkhuni says this. I think it might be in the Tathagata. But everything that's arising, it's just dukkha arising, and it's just dukkha ceasing. The Buddha says, both formerly and now, all I have taught is dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. He has taught the world. The world is the arising of dukkha. This is how right view is defined, talking about what we just went over. All exists. This is one extreme. All does not exist. This is a second extreme. Avoiding these two extremes, the realized one teaches by the middle way. And here, in many, many contexts in the suttas, the middle way is dependent origination. All exists, all doesn't exist. Let's look at the Pali. I want to check this out. Sabba is all. Mm. And so, realize one teaches by the middle way. Ignorance is a condition for choices. So, avidya, paccaya, sankhara. Sankhara, here translated as choices, are a condition for consciousness. Sankhara, paccaya, vijnana, and so on and so on. This is how the entire massive suffering originates. When ignorance fades away and ceases with nothing left over, choices ceases. When choices cease, consciousness ceases. Going down the line, this is how the entire massive suffering ceases. Karuna, did you have anything specific in this one you wanted me to clarify that I didn't cover? You know, this is like all exists, all doesn't exist, duality, non-duality. All these are like metaphysical things that the Buddha didn't really spend much time on. He refused to answer these kind of questions because they weren't really conducive to the development of the path. Well, there's no emptiness in this. I'm pretty sure. Like the actual, yeah. There's no. So the Buddha is not really talking about emptiness. Um, what I would say is suttas like this kind of go against the idea of everything being Maya in Mahayana, like it's all an illusion, like nothing is real. Um, I think that probably goes too far. The middle way between things existing and things not existing is things are a process of causes and conditions arising and ceasing. That's the middle way. I wonder why Dhammapalooza doesn't get a bunch of random wacko people joining and bots joining and spamming all kinds of things. Those of you who attend Morning Monastery Experience know that very well. For some reason, YouTube likes to put MME in the algorithm, and all kinds of random wacky people or bots show up saying all kinds of things. Thankfully, Dhammapalooza has been pure of that. All right. Well, why don't we read Majjhima Nikaya number 1? Let's see if anything pops up in this sutta that's connected to the sutta we just read. Majjhima Nikaya number 1, the root of all things. This is widely considered one of the harder suttas to grasp in the Majjhima Nikaya. And if I remember correctly, the last time I read this with everybody, I think I pulled in an Ananda. Oh, this doesn't seem too complicated. Let's see how I am now. Especially with the thin Colorado air making me a little goofy. So I have heard, at one time the Buddha was staying near Ukatta in the Subhaga forest at the root of a magnificent sal tree. Well, let's see, what does this say? Oh. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, I will teach you the explanation of the root of all things. Now, this is an interesting Pali word here. Sabba, all, Dhammas, so all phenomena, all things in existence, all nature. Mula, that's the root. And the Pariyayang, I think that's explanation. I don't know. I have to check that out. Order, course, quality. Okay. Yeah. So this is the root of all dhammas. Listen and apply your minds. Well, I will speak. Yes, sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: Take an unlearned, ordinary person who has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They have not seen true persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the true persons. They perceive earth as earth. Having perceived earth as earth, they conceive it to be earth. They conceive it in earth. They conceive it as earth. They conceive that earth is mine. They take pleasure in earth. And so this is a framework that we see often in relation to anatta, to not self, like the different ways you can kind of be deluded into thinking something is you. Right? If that's not me, then my essence is in it, or etc. Manyati. This is one of my favorite words that I always tell you about, right? Manyati, often translated as conceives, however, much better translated. Even this is wonderful, or there, manyati, imagines, is of opinion, deems. This is like a made-up imaginary opinion, right? They conceive it to be earth. They make it up. That is earth. And they conceive it, and then after conceiving comes the papancha, the propagation. They conceive it In the earth, they conceive it. As earth, they conceive that the earth is mine. They take pleasure in the earth. In earth. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive water as water. Having perceived water as water, they conceive it to be water. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. Speaking of water, I'm getting a little parched, so I'm going to have some. One of the things I've learned about, a couple things I've learned about being in Colorado, you need to drink way more water than you normally would in New Jersey. And also, something I almost never use in my whole life, you need lots of lip balm. So the more I come to Colorado, the more I adapt to the ways of Colorado. All right. They perceive fire as fire. Having perceived fire as fire, they conceive it to be fire. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive air as air. Having perceived air as air, they conceive it to be air. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive creatures as creatures. Let's see what. Yeah, Buddha as like living beings. Yeah. Having perceived creatures as creatures, they conceive it to be creatures. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive gods as gods. Devas. Having perceived gods as gods, they conceive it to be gods. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the progenitor as the progenitor. Ah, the creator Brahmas. All right. Prajapati. Yeah. The progenitor is something that brings forth, right? Like the parents are the progenitor of the child. Having perceived the progenitor as the progenitor, they conceive it to be the progenitor. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive Brahma as Brahma. Having perceived Brahma as Brahma, they conceive it to be Brahma. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive those of streaming radiance as those of streaming radiance. Having perceived those of streaming radiance as those of streaming radiance, they conceive it to be those of streaming radiance. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive those replete with glory as those replete with glory. This is another Deva realm. Having perceived those replete with glory as those replete with glory. Are these the radiant glory? Yeah. I like this. The gods of radiant glory. That's where you get the feeders on joy. We shall be like the radiant gods. Right? I think because of that line, I'm quite partial to the radiant gods. Having perceived those replete with glory as those replete with glory, they conceive it to be replete with glory. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive those of abundant fruit with those of abundant fruit. Having perceived those of abundant fruit as those of abundant fruit, they conceive it to be those of abundant fruit. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the vanquisher as the vanquisher. Oh, Abibu. Oh, Abibu is also one of the right hand disciples of a former Buddha, but I guess also a a Brahma as well. Having perceived the vanquisher as the vanquisher, they conceive it to be the vanquisher. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the dimension of infinite space as the dimension of infinite space. So now we're getting into the arupa attainments, formless attainments. Having perceived the dimension of infinite space as the dimension of infinite space, they conceive it to be the dimension of infinite space. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the dimension of infinite consciousness as the dimension of infinite consciousness. Having perceived the dimension of infinite consciousness as the dimension of infinite consciousness, they conceive it to be the dimension of infinite consciousness. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. See, there's perceiving, there's perception, and conception, all of which are subject to ignorance, right? All of which are subject to being false or wrong, because they haven't completely understood it. They perceive the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception as the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Having perceived the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception as the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, they conceive it to be the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the seen as the seen. Having perceived the seen as the seen, they conceive it to be seen. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive the herd as heard. Having perceived the herd as heard, they conceive it to be heard. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. Let me just check the chat to see if anybody has any comments or questions. This is getting quite in the weeds and can be confusing. I see Rick also has some questions or wants me to talk about something. We can do that after the sutta. They perceive the known as known. Having perceived the known as known, they conceive it to be known. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive oneness as oneness. Having perceived oneness as oneness, they conceive it to be oneness. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive diversity as diversity. Having perceived diversity as diversity, they conceive it to be diversity. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. They perceive all as all. Having perceived all as all, they conceive all to be all. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it. They perceive nibbana as nibbana. Having perceived nibbana as nibbana, they conceive it to be nibbana. They conceive it to be nibbana. Or they conceive it in nibbana. They conceive it as nibbana. They conceive that nibbana is mine. They take pleasure in nibbana. Why is that? Because they haven't completely understood it, I say. A mendicant who is a trainee. That's us. Maggasekha. Right? Sometimes it has 2 Ks, sometimes 1 Ks. Doesn't matter. But it means the same thing. A trainee or a student. A mendicant who is a trainee, who hasn't achieved their heart's desire, but lives as aspiring to the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, let them not conceive it to be earth. Let them not conceive it in earth. Let them not conceive it as earth. Let them not conceive that earth is mine. Let them not take pleasure in earth. Why is that? So they may completely understand it, I say. They directly know water, fire, air, creatures, gods, the progenitor, Brahma, those of streaming radiance, those replete with glory, those of abundant fruit, the vanquisher, the dimension of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception, the seen, heard, thought, known, oneness, diversity, all. They directly know extinguishment as extinguishment. Having directly known extinguishment as extinguishment, let them not conceive it to be extinguishment. Let them not conceive it in extinguishment. Let them not conceive it as extinguishment. Let them not conceive that extinguishment is mine. Let them not take pleasure in extinguishment. Why is that? So that they may completely understand it, I say. A mendicant who is perfected. So this would be an aseka. Right? Seka is a trainee. Aseka is one whose job is done, an arahant. With defilement ended, who has completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden. Laid down the burden. You guys know I talk about that one often enough. Achieved their own true goal, utterly ended the fetters of rebirth, and is rightly freed through enlightenment. Directly knows earth as earth. Having directly know earth as earth, they do not conceive it to be earth. They do not conceive it in earth. They do not conceive it as earth. They do not conceive that earth is mine. They do not take pleasure in earth. So think about it this way, right? So they directly know earth as earth. So that's yata bhuta. That's knowing things, seeing things as they are. They're not conceiving any connection to it, anything extra to it. They're not propagating a view of attachment to it or connection to the self, etc. Right? So this is just understanding something as it is, not all the extra kind of mental imagination and proliferation. Having directly known earth as earth, I think I said that. Okay. They directly know water as water, fire as fire, air as air, creatures as creatures, etc. Go gods, the progenitor, Brahma, those of streaming radiance, those replete with glory, those of abundant fruit, the vanquisher, the dimension of infinite space, the dimension of infinite consciousness, the dimension of nothingness, the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, the seen, heard, thought, known, oneness, diversity, all. They directly know extinguishment as extinguishment. Having directly known extinguishment as extinguishment, they do not conceive it to be extinguishment. They do not conceive it to in extent. They do not conceive it in extinguishment. They do not conceive it as extinguishment. They do not conceive that extinguishment is mine. They do not take pleasure in extinguishment. Why is that? Because they have completely understood it, I say. A mendicant who is perfected with defilements ended, who has completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, achieved their own true goal, utterly ended the fetters of rebirth, and is rightly freed through enlightenment, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, they do not conceive it to be earth. They do not conceive it in earth. They do not conceive it as earth. They do not conceive that earth is mine. They do not take pleasure in earth. Why is that? Because they're freed from greed due to the ending of greed. So we see here the Buddha is connecting the manyati and papancha and connecting to a permanent self. This is all due to ignorance. This is all due to our delusion, right? To our greed. They directly know water, fire, etc. I'm not going to go through all these. They directly know these. Why is that? Because they're freed from greed due to the ending of greed. A mendicant who is perfected with defilements ended, has come to this and this completed the spiritual journey, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, achieved their own true goal, utterly ended the fetters of rebirth, and is rightly freed through enlightenment, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, they do not conceive it in earth, they do not conceive it do not conceive it to be earth, they do not conceive it in earth, they do not conceive it as earth. They do not conceive. So conception is gone, right? All conceiving, all imagining, all propagation is gone. Why is that? Because they're free of hate due to the ending of hate. They directly know all the same things. Why is that? Because they're free of hate due to the ending of hate. A mendicant who is perfected with defilements ended, they directly know earth as earth. Why is that? Because they're free from delusion. So free from greed, hatred, and delusion. They directly know all of these as it is. Why is that? Because they're free of delusion due to the ending of delusion. The realized one, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive it to be earth. He does not conceive it in earth. He does not conceive it as earth. He does not conceive that earth is mine. He does not take pleasure in earth. Why is that? Because he has completely understood it to be the end. He directly knows all the list. Why is that? Because the realized one has completely understood it to be the end. The realized one, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha, directly knows earth as earth. Having directly known earth as earth, he does not conceive it to be earth. So we're going to go through that. He does not conceive it in earth, as earth. Earth is mine, doesn't take pleasure. Why is that? Because he has understood that taking pleasure is the root of suffering. That's the second noble truth. And that rebirth comes from continued existence. Whomever has come to be gets old and dies. That's why the realized one, with the ending and fading away, cessation, giving up, and letting go of all cravings, has awakened to the supreme perfect awakening, I say. He directly knows the whole list as it is. He's not conceiving, propagating. Why is that? Because he has understood that taking pleasure is the root of suffering. That is what the Buddha said. But the mendicants took no pleasure in what the Buddha said. That's a very rare thing. There's only a handful of suttas, really, that where monks, mendicants, bhikkhus take no pleasure in what the Buddha said. Let's see what Bhante Sujato says here. A commentary thing. They took no pleasure, according to the commentary, which explains that the mendicants did not understand the discourse. Some modern interpreters, Bhikkhu Bodhi, Nyanananda, rely on the commentarial background explanation, suggest that the problem was that they understood it all too well and were not happy that their beliefs were challenged. These explanations, however, do not take into account the centrality of the word Nanda. It is literally the root that lends the discourse its title. Given that an arhat does not take pleasure, even in nibbana, and that taking pleasure is the root of suffering, is it any wonder that the audience did not take pleasure in the teaching? It is not that they did not understand, nor that their understanding threatened their egos, but that they understood so well that they received the teachings with perfect equanimity. Oh, that's interesting. Elsewhere, the Buddha urged that one should neither approve nor dismiss a teaching. Yes, I talk about that quite often. It seems that the normal response when the audience approves a teaching with pleasure is meant in a conventional sense, whereas this sutta shows how for an arahant all such responses are transcendent. I like that note. That's a pretty good note. Yeah, fellow. I mean, well, that's basically what the note says, doesn't it? All right. Let's see. Yeah, it's a very powerful sutta. Very conceiving, manyati and papancha. Manyati. So let me look. Let's share another type of screen here. Maggasekha mind maps. Direct link to Maggasekha mind maps. So we want to see the fetters. So we need to go to all the defilements. Is this going to work? Here we go. See, we see here, I don't know if you can see it, but the higher fetters, one of the last one is conceit, mana. That's where we get manyati. That's the root. So this imagination, this conceiving, is one of the fetters. And since an awakened one does not have these fetters, they don't conceive. They see things as they are. They're not imagining anything. They're not building up more to it than what it is. Right? Is it in me? Is it mine? Is it, these things? So perception is just that. Perception is the act of identifying something, right? Your eye sees a form, and the perception is trying to identify what that form is. And of course, perception is faulty, so it's not always right. So and because of delusion and ignorance, perception is untrustworthy. So you have to, you have to question it and investigate it. It's interesting because I wonder, even for an arahant, is perception still not necessarily trustworthy? What's coming to my mind is the incident where the Buddha teaches mindfulness of death and all the monks start killing themselves. I wonder what his perception was. I don't know. I think that's a highly debated thing. Maybe it's a little blasphemous that I think that I had the thought that maybe perception is always questionable, even for an arhat. Well, I don't know. Well, Rick, the conceit is the conceiving. The conceit is the conceiving. Right? That's the you're so deluded, you're so conceited that you're like the Brahma that delights in creation. Right? You just you imagine and create and propagate those things. The Pali words have the same root, as far as I know, mana and manyati. I could look it up. I could be wrong. Let me see if it is the same root. Root family. Nope. No, it's the same. It's the same root family. Yep, same root family as mind. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let me go back to your questions or request for me to talk a little bit, Rick. Can you talk about the loss of mindfulness due to stress and anxiety? After 40 years of practice, I have grown in strength and ability to practice meditation and mindfulness of the body in daily life. However, I experienced multiple times where I was so caught up in the anxiety that I was not able to remember the tasks I had just done. Well, anxiety in a way is kind of a mitchasati, right? It's like a wrong mindfulness. It's you're hyper focused on something due to the anxiety, or maybe you're just hyper focused on the anxiety itself, and it draws your attention. It like grapples your attention so that you can't really be mindful and heedful. Um, at least until you've trained, mindfulness enough that you can really practice samma sati towards your anxiety and investigate it and to understand it fully. So yeah, the mind state of stress and anxiety is a totalitarian mind state. Doesn't have room for much else. It's an oppressive totalitarian mind state. So you have to break free from that mind state. That's what satipatthana can help you do. And break away, become the observer, investigate, instead of being attached in the conceit of the anxiety. Oh, this is my anxiety. Oh, I won't go away. Oh, this, oh, that. You just seek to try to understand the anxiety as anxiety. No extra layers, nothing added on. I was thinking in a daily conventional context. I'm full of conceit, which propagates conceiving. Yes. Yeah, we all are. You still think that you're a permanent being. You have some kind of permanent essence, that this body is yours. Right? Until you're an awakened being, you think that, so you're conceited. If you have any if you have any aspect of existence where you have the framework, the basis of I am, then the conceit is there. All right, I'll give it another minute or so to see if anything pops up, and then maybe we'll do some meditation. All right, let's practice. I think everybody here has heard me do meditations quite enough, so why don't we just practice in silence together? Don't need to do guided meditations if there's few people and most people who have been here many times. So Slowly open your eyes, coming out of the meditation. And as you do that, we'll read some Dhammapada, then do final business and call it a night. We'll read from the Maggasekha, the elephant. As an elephant in the battlefield withstands arrows shot from bows all around, even so shall I endure abuse. There are many indeed who lack virtue. The tamed elephant is led into a crowd, and the king mounts a tamed elephant. Best among men is the subdued one who endures abuse. Excellent are well-trained mules, thoroughbred Sindhu horses, and noble tusker elephants. But better still is the man who has subdued himself. Not by these mounts, however, would one go to the untrodden land, Nibbana. As one who is self-tamed goes by his own tamed and well-controlled mind. Musty during rut, the tusker named Dhammapalooza is uncontrollable. Held in captivity, the tusker does not touch a morsel, but only longingly calls to mind the elephant forest. When a man is sluggish and gluttonous, keeping and rolling around in bed like a fat domestic pig, that sluggard undergoes rebirth again and again. Formerly this mind wandered about as it liked, where it wished, and according to its pleasure. But now I shall thoroughly master it with wisdom, as a mahout controls with his ankus an elephant in rut. Delight in heedfulness. Guard well your thoughts. Draw yourself out of this bog of evil, even as an elephant draws himself out of the mud. If for company you find a wise and prudent friend who leads a good life, you should, overcoming all impediments, keep his company joyously and mindfully. If for company you cannot find a wise and prudent friend who leads a good life, then like a king who leaves behind a conquered kingdom, or like a lone elephant in the elephant's forest, you should go your way alone. Better it is to live alone. There is no fellowship with a fool. Live alone and do no evil. Be carefree like an elephant in the elephant forest. Good are friends when the need arises. Good is contentment with just what one has. Good is merit when life is at an end. And good is the abandoning of all suffering. In this world, good it is to serve one's mother, good it is to serve one's father, good it is to serve the monks, and good it is to serve the holy men. Good is virtue until life's end. Good is faith that is steadfast. Good is the acquisition of wisdom, and good is the avoidance of evil. Yes, Karuna, a fat domestic pig rolling around in the mud, not getting out of bed. All right, friends. Well, with that, I think we can do our final business. For those joining, if you're joining for the first time and you'd like to continue to find out more about my teachings and my different streams and sessions, you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org. This is the organization that I'm building. And you can find out all the information there. You can get all of my writings and teachings, and you can sign up, put your email in to get a notification every time I post something new. Same thing on YouTube. You can subscribe, click the bell, and then you'll get notified every time I come out with a new video or a live stream, etc. So we do a variety of different events during the week. We just are finishing up our Monday night, Dhammapalooza. Then Monday through Friday in the mornings at 8 a.m. New York time, we do for a half hour a morning monastery experience. This is the experience of what you would get if you stayed at a monastery, some precepts, some chanting, a little bit of Dhamma thought of the day, Dhamma teachings before work or whenever time you actually view it. Saturdays, when I'm able to, I do a session on the program Insight Timer. And Sunday nights on our Discord, we do the Discord Maggasekha Discord community. We do sutta readings, as we have been doing for almost 8 years now. So if you are interested in the Maggasekha community Discord, it's a community that is rooted in the early texts, the suttas, both in study and practice. If you're interested in that, you can send an email to the email listed on the screen, maggasekha@gmail.com, and ask for an invite, and we'll send you one. All right, let's share merit. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata chamehi, sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sampasampati siddhya, akasata chabumata, deva naga mahidika, punyang tang anumoditva, charangarakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends, we come to the end of another Dhammapalooza. Go, Suki Hotu, may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. Have a good week.